says his face is perfect, but if he knew biology, he would know it's not going to be perfect for long. Nice burn, Elliot. But Jake guesses that happened because of an unexplainable natural event, which he's right about, and Elliot agrees. Then Jake asks how much the human nose grows each terrorist attack, in the form of an airborne chemical. The signs of infection are confused speech and physical disorientation, which ultimately lead to death. They've decided to send the students and teacher home for the night. As Elliot packs, a teacher, who's his best friend Julian, appears. He says their odds of getting attacked here are very low, and he's not worried, but they decide to meet up soon and bring their families along. Elliot says his wife is acting a bit strange and distant recently, but there's nothing to worry about. Alma is at home when her phone rings, but she doesn't respond. Elliot arrives behind her. He begins packing stuff up as they're about to leave. Alma's phone rings again, where Joey's voice is heard, before she hangs up and acts like that didn't just happen. At the railway station, Elliot meets Julian and his daughter, Jess. On TV, autopsies on the victims show that the chemical is a neurotoxin, which attacks the brain's functions. Alma greets Julian from nearby. But we see from their faces, they don't really like each other. Alma expresses displeasure at Elliot bringing Julian along, but he calms Alma down, and they all continue. Back in Rittenhouse Park, Philadelphia, the area is full of people, and a wind starts to blow. Suddenly, all the humans stop in their tracks, like in New York. Nearby, a cop shoots himself. And other people also begin using the same gun on themselves. Back in the train, Alma calls Jerry, angrily telling him to stop acting like a creep, because they just ate tiramisu together and that was it. We can't hear Jerry, but it appears he informed her that Boston and Philadelphia were just attacked. Soon everyone on the train finds out, causing distress. Julian gets a message from his wife, who's safe on a bus to New Jersey, which brings him great relief. Just then, the train suddenly stops at a small town. Outside, Elliot pressures the railway staff to explain, as they can't just leave him here. One man says they stopped because they lost contact with everyone. They're at a restaurant later, but Jess is feeling down. So Elliot tries to comfort her. It works and she lets out a big smile. A woman next to them shows a video where a zookeeper suddenly walks to the lioness and lets himself be torn to shreds. A man calls everyone's attention to the TV. A reporter updates them on the situation. He says the attack is too large-scale, and no terrorist group could pull this off. A map makes them realize that now inside the affected zone, there's a power cut, and everyone begins panicking and escaping in their vehicles. Elliot reaches outside and tries to ask for a ride, but everyone ignores him, even if they have space. Frank pulls up and offers them a ride, and Elliot happily accepts. Julian asks the others to take Jess on his behalf. His wife isn't replying, so he decided to go find her with another group. He hugs Jess and tells her it'll be alright, and goes to the other car. Afterwards, they make a quick stop at Frank's house, who claims this attack must be caused by plants, because they can release chemicals, so Jess steps away from one. But Alma guesses he's crazy. Julian's group reaches New Jersey, and are horrified to see several people hanging on the trees. Julian tells them to cover all the air vents, and tries to calm the woman down by offering her a bathroom. Suddenly, he looks up to see a cut in the car's roof. He realizes this is the end for them. The car stops for a moment, then accelerates and rams into a tree. Julian survives and walks out, then uses the glass to slice his veins. In Frank's car, they notice something on the road ahead, and stop. Elliot uses his binoculars, realizing that it's dead people. So they decide to reverse and find another road. A military jeep stops near them. A soldier runs up and says everyone in his direction committed suicide by walking into barbed wire. Soon other people arrive there as well. Realizing there's death in all directions, the people decide to just wait here for now. A local man tells the people there's a small town nearby. It feels like the safest area, so everyone agrees, and they decide to split up in two groups. Elliot's group decides to go first. While walking, Alma confesses about Joey, and that she only had dessert with him once, but feels guilty about it. Elliot feels let down by her lie. They continue walking, but Frank hears wind blow and slows down. The soldier ahead of him begins screaming military commands and kills himself. Further away, Elliot's group hears multiple gunshots from behind and realize they're not safe. The group begins falling apart, and everyone's looking to Elliot for directions. Under pressure, he theorizes that it must be the plants causing it after all. He believes that the chemical is released whenever the plants feel threatened. And maybe larger groups are attacked first, which could be how it spread from large cities to small villages. A wind starts blowing in their direction, so Elliot urges them to split into smaller groups as they run away. The wind passes by Elliot's group and they brace for the worst. But suddenly things go silent, and all of them are strangely unaffected. Perhaps because of their smaller cars. Two boys, Jared and Josh, also join him. Afterwards, he spots a house behind an abandoned car, and they all go to it. They find a map inside, getting a better idea of this area. Outside, Elliot begins singing a song to prove they're all completely fine. The man inside orders them to leave, but Josh calls him a P-word for not giving food to a little girl, and begins furiously kicking the door. Elliot tells him to shut up and stop. And then suddenly, Jared also gets shot from a window and dies. Elliot feels broken, but Alma tells him they have to protect Jess, running away before the lunatic can kill him. After some time, they see an old house, so Elliot goes to check inside alone. He finds an old lady sitting on the porch. She asks what he's doing here. She guesses the kind thing to do must be offering them food. They're at her table and finally getting to eat a full meal. She's a strict old woman called Mrs. Jones, who hates the outside world and stays by herself on this land. She's cold, but offers them to sleep at the guest room for the night. There, Alma and Elliot are talking when he hears a sound. He finds Mrs. Jones standing nearby, as if she's sleepwalking. She makes some accusations of the baffled Elliot, then randomly walks away. It's morning, and luckily, nobody got murdered in their sleep. Elliot walks downstairs where the others are hurt, but thinks he spotted Mrs. Jones in her bed. However, it's a doll instead. She's behind him, accusing him of being a thief, and orders them to leave right now, then furiously walks outside. He follows, but finds her in the garden. She suddenly starts acting strange, as the wind starts blowing near her. Seeing this, Elliot heads back inside to tell the others to hide, and sees Mrs. Jones at the window, smashing her face into the glass, letting the wind enter inside. He backs away into another room, where he hears Alma and Jess giggling nearby. He follows the voice, but realizes it's coming from the farmhouse outside. The two are casually playing in the farmhouse, as if no disaster is going on. He tells them to close the windows and hide. He speaks to them from the pipe connecting the two houses, and says he's afraid for the future. He thinks the chemical attack has become more sensitive, affecting smaller groups of people. Alma wonders if this is the end, and wishes he was with them, and he feels the same way. They talk about past time, and remember the love they had. Elliot starts tearing up, and says if he's going to die, he wants to be with her. He steps outside and begins walking toward her. The wind blows past him, but he's unaffected. Alma and Jess also walk outside holding hands. They reach close, holding each other's hand. As they look at the distance, where wind blows across the mountain, the three of them being unaffected for some reason. They return inside together. Elliot wonders if the chemical attack ended just before they went outside. Afterwards, 3 months pass, and they are back in the city. And the couple have chosen to raise Jess as their own child. On TV, a scientist is being interviewed about the happening, and why it only lasted a little over a day, and only affected the eastern coast of USA. The scientist says this could be an early warning event, and worse could come next. The interviewer points out is a pregnancy test, and is delighted to see the king calls it. Outside, Elliot walks to her as she waits to surprise is in France. Two friends walk across a park when suddenly they hear a scream. It was nothing, but one of them got a bit spooked. Then the other man begins repeating his sentences. Behind them, everyone is frozen in place. And our story ends here with this cliffhanger. Hope you enjoyed this recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps a lot. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.
In Saddam's hands too. What do you want us to do about it? Protect us. Play it day one with Game Pass. Minute and 2 seconds of logos. Over 2 minutes of credits on top of clouds that do nothing for nobody. Something does happen in this movie called The Happening, right? Jesus Christ, the score is so much better than the movie in which it's situated. I'm gonna throw an extra 5 cents in. I'm so sorry to see this, Mr. Ronauer. In case you confused it with Central Park, Oklahoma City.
I forgot where I am. You're at the place where the killers meet to decide what to do with the crippled girl.
Even for an M. Night Shyamalan movie, what? The appropriate question is this what she's actually looking at? Because I can't see a goddamn thing. And I'm guessing she can't see whatever she's looking at from this distance either, because there's nothing there. You know, back in 2008, those improv everywhere assholes would sometimes go way too far.
Fair.
Of course, there's one asshole in this entire park that's temporarily immune to the evil windy voodoo happening, so we can have some sort of explicit narrative of what's happening, rather than just watching it happening. I can't wait till they get to Nebraska and they tell us it's 25,928 blocks from Central Park, New York City.
Well, I saw your thing and it said WY. The big guy says, no, man. Mine says, welcome to Jamaica. Have a nice day.
That's a long dick joke right there. Jesus, give him something. Give the injured person some room cliche. I mean, seriously, these guys are standing well away from the bar. Also, the beginning of this movie is really just an excuse for M. Night to show off how many different ways people can die, which was already done much more effectively 15 years before in Broadway. I don't know if you guys have heard about this article in the New York Times about honeybees, man. Wahlberg playing anything with sincerity always comes off like a guy who really wants to try this acting thing. Like, everything sincere is said with an urgency it doesn't quite deserve. Hey guys, did you hear the sun is going to supernova in the future? Maybe it's time we started planning for Earth's evacuation, because we're not gonna make it when that happens. Also, the movie just assumes that these high schoolers would be carefully poring over the science section of the New York Times, and some of them might, sure. Dickman sounds like he expects them to. Also, in case you confused it for Philadelphia High School, Pittsburgh. It's scary, huh? This is the question that M. Night constantly asked the entire crew of this movie during filming. Should be more interested in science, Jake. You know why? Because your face is perfect. You priceless act of nature and will never fully understand it. Nice answer, Jake. That's right. Dude, this is the equivalent of answering because when the teacher asks why. Or saying, because language is like life, man. Science will come up with some reason to put in the books. I mean, we were forced to understand. Weirdly enough, the text for this class was edited by Mike Huckabee. The Dark Lord, coming into our eyes. I'd like to think of this movie as a sequel to Dead Poet Society that went terribly, terribly wrong. Also, so is this blatant insubordination to the vice principal supposed to endear Elliot to his students? Like, I can't figure out how shitty or excellent this asshole is supposed to be. Basically, Jason Schwartzman's character in Yo Teach. This classroom has 2 light switches, not terribly far apart from each other, and with only one entrance exit. I know why the music department couldn't get their funding now. Why did the vice principal drag Mark Wahlberg out of his class personally, when it looks like these teachers were told via a normal communication device, the intercom? Or did the vice principal drag each one of these teachers out individually and finally got to him just now? There appears to be an event happening. Roll credits. Also, let it never be said that the principal of this school was hired based on his communication skills.
Central Park was just hit by what seems to be a terrorist attack.
Central Park? That's kind of odd. It really, really isn't. What makes Central Park odder than any other place where this could happen?
Identified variables, design an experiment.
There's no one even mentioning all that's happening in New York. I saw the students looking at their phones, so they know what's going down. But sure, let's focus more on the students' begrudging respect for their weirdly slow teacher. I'd like to imagine that the script told Elliot to say, hey guys, and then when Mark Wahlberg turned the page, he found the script blank. He figured he had to literally say what was on the page.
I told him the probability of something happening in Philadelphia is very low.
Especially an NBA championship.
Let me think about that, okay?
Is there a reason that the camera is right there when it cuts to Elliot?
She's acting.
I know you're used to that kind of behavior. behavior by hanging out with me anyway.
I'm gonna tell you something. You should never tell your best friend.
Why is everybody saying that? Nobody has said that at all in this movie to anyone for any reason until now.
I walked into a waiting room by mistake and she was crying. That's not who she is. She's never gonna jump in when you need her, man.
Okay, couple things here. First, Julian walked into the waiting room by accident. Second, just from this brief encounter, he knows for sure that Alma and Elliot aren't gonna work. Third, he's never told them about this. And finally, he waits until there's a potential disaster and they're surrounded by high school kids to drop this fucking truth bomb. Jesus Christ, that's fucked up. Can we unpack what's happening here? Alma gets a call from her potential side piece, but rather than decline the call since she knows Elliot's almost home, she lets that ring the whole way. Then, when Elliot does get home, she doesn't immediately erase the call. I know this is the late 2000s. Besides being a time for one, people know how to properly cell phone. Why does the World News Network constantly show the temperature for Philadelphia?
This new neurotoxin is basically flipping the preservation switch.
And I'm reporting from outside the building with no personal protection, despite the toxin being clearly airborne in this city. Also, man, there's never been a more convenient time for Elliot to walk in on some perfect exposition.
Just when you thought there couldn't be any more evil that could be invented.
Hey, we still haven't even gotten to the last Airbender and After Earth. I don't know if there was technically a feature where the buzzer on a flip phone would ring constantly, but I choose to believe that Alma hacked hers and turned it into a sex toy since the last time it rang.
Autopsies on the first victims confirm the toxin is a natural compound.
So there's the theory that this movie is about mass paranoia, and in fact, nothing is happening at all, and people are doing bizarre things because their minds are playing tricks on them, and that all the goofball we see is a result of this mental play. But when the movie puts in segments like this, where a sane newscaster is reporting news from scientists, it starts to break those walls down. Plus, it somehow only affects people in the Northeast, and in the day of the internet and cable news, this mass paranoia would have hit way more areas of the country.
How are you?
Good, you?
Good. What the hell is the deal between these two? Was there more to that waiting room encounter than we knew about? Could he ultimately be the Joey that keeps calling her goddamn phone? Movie asks way too many unanswerable questions.
Don't get all sensitive. Just give her a chance.
Skip. And look, maybe it's a mass paranoia metaphor, but is this how mass paranoia starts? With a bunch of people doing the same thing at the same time, independently of each other? It would make more sense if you had one person think they see something, tell someone else, make that person paranoid, and so on. But this is not that. Also, I'm pretty sure this entire movie is based on that Radiohead Just video, only with attempts at explanations that make the mystery not fun to watch. The hallmark of this genius neurotoxin is clearly its flair for dramatic timing. Good thing this guy picks up the gun and walks several feet before killing himself, so that the woman on the sidewalk can see the gun and complete this one take. So that's what the kids were calling it back in 2008. I guess it was the Netflix and chill 10 years ago.
Let's go to New Jersey. Headed to the town of Princeton.
Awesome. Mommy's headed back in. But the evil death toxin, even if you believe the attacks on New York and Philly were specific to those locations, why would you go anywhere near those two areas, much less right in between them?
What the hell is going on, Elliot?
I'm sorry, ma'am. The correct wording is, what the hell is happening, Elliot? I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to exit the bus.
Train service has been discontinued. This will be the last stop for all passengers.
It's hilarious how the train workers decide to go with the we're stopping here and you're just going to have to deal with it and f*** you for being curious method, instead of just telling them something about the attacks that everyone in the world knows about. It would be a satisfactory explanation for their stop.
Why are you giving me one useless piece of information at a time?
We lost contact.
Like Mark Wahlberg is the only asshole who's asking these guys what's going on. I remember once at the movie theater where a crowd of people ran into the projection booth to yell at a projectionist when the Shawshank Redemption f***ed up. To think all these people would be calmly talking amongst themselves during a supposed terrorist attack stopped in Baltimore, Pennsylvania, 10 feet away, striking people left. Just told me that it's contact with everyone. Isn't that terrifying but useful information? Shouldn't you be on the cell phone or watching the news or doing something other than standing out in the open air right now? Man, I can't tell you how many times I heard my high school science teacher use the word porno in casual conversation. I know that everyone gives off energy, right? This poor guy.
Look at this. It was taken an hour ago with the phone up busy.
Review my natural death porn.
The event appears to be limited to the Northeast.
Which is, as we all know, the only location in America with trees and plants.
Where we
Now we have a problem on both sides of the roadway. Either it's mass paranoia, which this entire diner should be suffering from, or it's an actual chemical attack, which this entire diner should be suffering from, considering it's right in the damn center of the attack.
whatever this is, it looks like it's 90 miles from here.
90 miles west, south, north, and how do you know? And yet this is good enough for all these assholes to leave the diner and probably without leaving a tip. But they're reasonably confident this is an outside kill, whether it's natural or not, right? So why all those cars have the fucking windows rolled down? Juliet! I swear to God, this entire Elliot tries to hit your ride scene was shot without John Leguizamo while he was on the set of Righteous Kill. And then they got him for an hour or so to shoot this. Like, this is Elliot's best friend. They've been traveling together the whole time. And yet it looked like for a minute there, one or the other was is willing to get a ride without checking the other stats.
I can't get a vid on the phone or email or nothing.
So your plan is to abandon your child, go to a different epicenter of this attack, which is still a pretty large city, and just stand in the middle of a toxin-filled street and yell for her? This is like the worst parts of the plans in Cloverfield and What About Bob combined.
I got her to take my daughter's hand unless you mean it.
This motherfucker who's leaving his daughter in their care takes time to threaten one of her caregivers? I knew this movie was bad, but it's bad on a micro level. For some reason, this shot of Leguizamo sitting still in a Jeep is presented to us in slow motion. Subtle. Hot dogs get a bad rap. I bet this guy's stand-up act kills in Filbert. Plants react with human stimulus. They prove the big tests. Elliot, a science teacher, doesn't believe this basic tenet of human-plant interaction, essentially agreeing with Alma. Not only that, aren't they running for their lives while being pursued by a natural phenomenon that no one understands? Is it sometime cavalier tomfoolery? Seeing the obviously hanging people in the middle of the road? It took until you were right on top of it to see it? Even if the girl in the back seat couldn't see it until now. Both Julian and the driver are psychopaths who decided not to warn anyone before they passed it. Also, these are hilariously complicated methods of death, right? Why not just wander into the local river, run the truck into a tree, line the workers in front of the truck, and mow them down, and then have only one person hang themselves? My point is that M. Night was so enamored with the fact that he could show us all these horrific images that he just that will keep this soft-top Jeep Wrangler airtight. Just look at me. Just keep looking at me. Dude, why took a chance on making her look at her face to calm her down when she might have seen the pest, or Spawn, or the fan? Also, I guess because they're going to New Jersey, this is the movie's attempt to stick Brad Halloran, a.k.a. Dante Hicks, into the movie. This is a poor attempt at putting Dante Hicks in the movie. And I think he wasn't even supposed to be here today. Julian, at least for the time being, easily survives this.
Then we hit the highway from there. We're 30 miles from the state line.
What state line are they looking for? The map on the TV basically covered the entirety of the eastern seaboard, so the only possible escape would be west, but the next state over would be Ohio, and that's a long-ass way away. Have they really been driving that long? But it's still daylight?
You got binoculars in the back from when you were spying on our neighbors.
From the Jeep? Why do the binoculars need an explanation? I mean, yeah, we might have seen this guy having convenient binoculars, but it's still what they kind of are, right? Wow, what a specific place for all these people to die, especially right out in the middle of nowhere on a country road. This is clearly not the best place to organize a class. She's in crackers. She's in crackers. Elliot is suspicious right now. This is just his everyday go-to computer. I think Elliot is in the running to be the least helpful hero in a movie ever made. An award show I just made up, airing tonight in my head. At Bamble, 30 in the morning.
Just keep watching out the window with the tree, baby. Someone will come and get you soon.
Tell her not to go near the window with the tree.
Baby, don't go near the window with the tree.
Would anyone listen to this asshole? Especially someone who has no clue what he's talking about. This is her daughter, right? Sorry, honey, I know you're scared, but this dude looks a lot like that guy from Rockstar. So I'm gonna go ahead and trust his opinion on how you should proceed in the disaster scenario, okay?
She says everyone's dead outside. Honey, you talking funny. What's wrong with you?
Good of Stacy to start dying after she gave important information. Did she live when everyone else already died?
I see. In calculus.
This comes from watching too much Stand at the Limit. I got an easy remedy for that. Take 2 Pulp Fictions and an Argo, and you're right as rain.
I'm outside.
Oh, really? How am I supposed to masturbate to that? Also, if Elliot is increasingly suspicious of the goddamn wind, which everyone should be at this point, why is he not in one of the cars right now with the windows up? Seriously, this motherfucker straight up tells Stacy to stay away from the windows while he's out in the middle of open air, eating cold hot dogs. Yeah, it's been a rough day, huh? Hey, you better check on Joey to see how he's holding up.
Trees can communicate with bushes, bushes with grass, and everything in between.
This didn't seem insane in the script, but when you hear it out loud...
Maybe we should have waited for the rest of them to stay in the big group like the private said.
What I'm wondering is why they're going to has dirt roads, but they're still fucking roads, right? There has to be a reason why they're eschewing the safety, comfort, and shelter of the cars, right? Right? Hot dog guy looks to his right and sees the wind blowing, and god damn it, is that ever suspicious. Normal everyday fucking wind, but this so-called plant expert thinks there's something different about it, and he's right. Why do some people talk crazy when they get infected, but most of them... Wahlberg's weirdly serene level of concern here is a sin, but everyone else just standing around while gunshots go off? Nobody fears for their lives? They just know for a fact that those people got infected and are killing themselves.
Something in this field could be releasing the chemical into the air when there's too many of us together.
Holy. Or for the politics, Elliot's theory would already be published in Scientific American. Elliot's scientific method was to stand in the field while gunshots taking the lives of his fellow travelers rang out. From this, he came up with his groundbreaking larger group theory, in which plants decide to let small groups of people live as long as larger group in virtually the same area perceived as a bigger group. The evidence comes from tickling your own date.
Let's just stay ahead of the wind.
This iconic line is setting up the greatest chase against the weather scene since global warming attacked in The Day After Tomorrow.
Here it comes.
What's taking the wind so goddamn long? It's f***ing wind, but it seriously needs this long to overtake some slow-moving assholes. Also, not that it really matters, but didn't anyone think to cover up their noses, mouths, or other orifices? Like, we figured out that it's in the air, but isn't that the hard part? The rest of it, keeping it out of our bodies, is relatively simple. The wind, of course, does nothing, and they're fine. And this is the dual problem with whatever this movie is saying is the threat. Either it's mental, which these guys should not be doing because they're as paranoid as they can be, or it's the toxic, which should have struck them after the wind tracked them down. But they're okay. This movie continues.
Is there anything happening?
Sorry, Max Payne, but we've already had our allowable amounts of roll credits moments, and for the repetition, I will have to award you with 12 extra cents.
My name is Elliot Moore.
Maybe somewhere in this movie is a comedy. Maybe M. Night's laughing at us all for taking this movie seriously. It was a ridiculous gamble that nearly ended his career, though. Let's think about that for a second. The timing of this movie, if a failed comedy, could not have been worse. It came after The Village and Lady in the Water, and exactly the time to be making a movie where Mark Wahlberg talks to plants.
Plastic. Talking to a plastic plant.
Yeah, it's the plastic part that makes talking to it insane.
Why is this happening?
Believe me, kid, I was definitely asking myself the same question in the movie theater in 2008 around this point.
The bees disappearing and now feels like a pattern.
God damn it, this has nothing to do with bees, Elliot. You haven't even mentioned the fucking bees since the beginning of the movie.
There's two groups coming together. There's too many of them together.
Apparently, this proves Elliot right, but remember those construction workers? They were around tons of people who were flinging themselves off the roof. They didn't get infected. What about Stacy, who was on the phone with her mom and inside a house all alone? She wasn't around a large group of people. Ironically, though, Stacy's mom was around a large group of people. Maybe she's all I want. Waiting for some...
All those still inside the affected area.
Heroes find a convenient radio hanging from a fence, but static prevents them from hearing the entire emergency broadcast cliche. Also, why hasn't this been playing the whole time? Thousands of people are dead in a huge swath of the Northeast. Last time Elliot turned on the radio a few minutes ago, mind you, there was just talk radio about a fucking nuclear disaster.
Are you sure? We should keep going.
Why? You figured out that the problem is a large number of people. You're not racing against the clock, so as long as your group is small, you can camp out anywhere as long as you can find food, right?
Are you joking?
I feel like this question and Mark Wahlberg's definite but not definite reaction to it sums up what it's like to watch this movie.
I think I can open this door. Yeah, we're gonna take whatever we want.
Or you could try it, right? This is kind of an apocalyptic scenario, but there are no f***ing zombies around to wake up against. You're at the front door would be safe and sufficient.
On Blackwater,